Alrighty. Let me do an audio check real quick. Check, check, 1, 2. Alright, everything's good. Let's get into it today. The lighting's a little good. Lighting's fine. Let's go straight into the articles. I will be skipping these two Spanish articles because there's one translated in English that summarizes it up here. And we will start. Yep, these two are in Spanish. Then the same two are up here in English. So I'll read the English versions. Let's start where I left off. July 29th, 2024 is the last article that I need to read. Okay, so as usual, this is Leftist Read-Along with a sprinkle of stoicism. I read these articles, analyzing myself. It's my way of keeping myself from not reading them for the whole year. So I just read them in chronological order, and usually read them on Sunday evenings, but I figure I skipped last Sunday, so I'm just going to start reading them whenever I can. And people can jump along, comment, or comment on the live feed and have conversations if we can, if possible. All right. Check out the description if you like, and to support Liberation News if possible. First article today, Public Safety Power Shutoffs, Why They Aren't a Solution to Wildfires, by Tina Landis, July 29th, 2024. The photo is of a U.S. Army soldiers work to control Dixie Fire in 2019. Credit Flickr, National Interagency Fire Center. Tina Landis is the author of the book Climate Solutions Beyond Capitalism. Millions of excuse me, I should drink some water before millions across a region lose power. Frequency of fires. Over a century of fire suppression and outlawing of prescribed burns have caused wildfire fuel to build up. Excuse me. Let me read that again. Although climate change is a major contributor to the increasing frequency of fires, over a century of fire suppression and outlawing of prescribed burns have caused wildfire fuel to build up, adding to the intensity and size of these fires. Instead of addressing the root cause of wildfires in 2012, the California Public Utilities Commission approved a policy that allows private utilities to shut off power to customers during high wind, high heat events as a measure to prevent wildfires from being sparked by electrical infrastructure. Since the catastrophic Camp Fire in 2018 that was sparked by PG&E electricity infrastructure, which killed 85 people and destroyed the town of Paradise, PG&E has regularly used public safety power shutoffs (PSPS) as a wildfire prevention tactic. The following year in 2019, the Kincaid Fire was sparked again by PG&E lines despite the PSPS program, which failed to shut off power before the fire was sparked. The PSPS also failed to prevent the Dixie Fire in 2021 after a tree collapsed onto a distribution line, creating an arc fault, and after PG&E customers reported an outage indicating a problem, PG&E continued to energize the circuit for over 9 hours, slowly heating the ground and igniting fuels into an inferno while the meters kept running. Slowly heating the ground and igniting fuels into an inferno while the meters kept running. It seems that in the richest state and the richest country in the world, we could have wildfire safety while still maintaining power to homes. Why does the state allow PG&E and other private utilities to use the PSPS program to avoid wildfires? It really comes down to protecting the profits of these corporations and protecting them from liability for sparking wildfires. It's not a solution to the climate crisis, but a band-aid that causes a whole domino effect of other problems. For wealthy Californians who have rooftop solar and backup battery systems or who purchase generators to power their homes when power shutoffs occur, the PSPS program causes little to no disruption to their lives. But for working class residents who cannot afford backup power systems, the PSPS program is not only disruptive but can be deadly. Often, the power shutoffs occur during heat waves, leaving people without air conditioning or even fans to keep cool. Extreme heat is the number one climate change killer, more so than hurricanes, floods, or other weather extremes. Those who rely on medical equipment and refrigerated medicines lose those life-saving mechanisms when power is shut off. Low-income residents, who are barely scraping by on a good day, lose all their refrigerated food when shutoffs occur and plummet deeper into food insecurity. Days without power may also mean lack of communication systems with no way to charge cell phones or use the internet, and it can also mean lost wages if the business you work at cannot operate during the PSPS event. A 2023 class action lawsuit against PG&E sought $2.5 billion in damages for spoiled food and medicine and lost income that occurred during PSPS events in October and November 2019, when over a million residents were left without power. The California Supreme Court recently sided with PG&E and blocked the lawsuit from moving forward. And for those running backup generators during PSPS events, all the emissions from fossil fuel power generators adds greenhouse gases to the atmosphere and contributes to pollution buildup within a neighborhood, much more so than a power plant does due to lack of emission controls on generators and sitting of power plants away from residential areas. We know that even with immediate comprehensive action on climate change, wildfire risk will continue to be an issue in the West. Instead of relying on PSPS, power lines should be put underground to avoid sparking fires. And if the private utilities refuse to do it, but would rather hand over funds earmarked for safety and maintenance to wealthy shareholders instead, as PG&E has repeatedly done, then these corporations should be taken under public control and safety measures prioritized. Climate change is a type of class war with the working class and poor impacted the most and driven deeper into poverty with each extreme weather event, while the wealthy investor class continues to reap record profits. There are many other climate solutions that can be implemented that would cool the climate and reduce wildfire risk, such as restoring wetlands and river systems to hydrate the landscape and reduce drought impacts, increasing prescribed burns to reduce wildfire fuel buildup, restoring native perennial, grasses that stay green all year round, unlike the invasive grasses that early European settlers introduced, and rapidly reducing greenhouse gas emissions from energy, transportation, industry, and agriculture sectors. All of these solutions would cool the climate over time and reduce fire risk. But under capitalism, ensuring profits for corporations supersedes all else, even humanity's very existence. We must oppose the PSPS program as a solution to wildfire risks and demand public control over our energy system. A public utility could rapidly implement the transition to renewable energy, underground and upgrade transmission lines, and lower electricity rates while keeping the power on for all residents. Man, I would even go further left on this, I think. How about not overpopulating a place that wasn't meant to be populated to begin with? Uh, I get the expansion of humanity and the need to overcome all obstacles, but honestly, if you're living in an environment well above its means, well above its capacity, then these are things to be expected. There is a carbon footprint, and there's carbon footprint limitations for every part on Earth. as to how many people will that area be able to sustain efficiently. Uh, America has gone well above its carbon footprint everywhere. Uh, we need to think more about reducing footprints, not only through a green transition, but also through population degrowth. Um, is that possible? That's very complicated, because what that takes a full upending of the current system, and creating a socialist or communist system that actually prioritizes humanity and balance with Earth, balance with our environment. And it's a worldwide effort. Does that mean we shouldn't try? Of course not. We should always try. We should try everything that's suggested in this article, uh, even socializing the uh, the power grid system, giving it to the community, giving it to the government, uh, a non-corrupt government system, uh, so that these power lines could go underground, so they could be safer, so they could have better shut-off systems. All these things that can prevent these fires that could be done aren't done because they want to make a profit. And like the article says, people that have power banks at home aren't the ones suffering. They're generally hardworking American, the working class, that makes from 0K to 100K a year, that are suffering these from these issues, from these power lack issues. There's also other power systems that can be used. Some people are very against nuclear power. You can practically power the whole Earth with and use only 0.01% of Earth's landscape, as opposed to other power systems like solar or wind. And there's healthier nuclear systems coming out that are actually renewable or eco-friendlier. Um, Why aren't they used? Because they're not as profitable, because they take a lot of investment, because we have a big addiction to oil. Uh, so we need to change all that. Yeah, it's a solid article. Let me check. Focus, eh? All right, so it's in focus now. I wonder if, huh, interesting. Anyways, um, cool. So we'll move on now. Let's see, no comments, which is good. It's fine. Let me check audio again. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Audio's good. Let's move along to the next article. Like I said, okay. U.S. government and their media lackeys must respect Venezuela's democracy. hmm there's a few articles today. I don't know how far I can get here today. One, two. So far, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Liberation News. You've been pretty busy. Maybe I should just take a couple a night, or as many as I can. Let's see how far I can get today. Last time I did a marathon, I think I went for like 3 hours. Um, Anyways, this is really important, very relevant. I've been following this closely. So the next article, next article reads, PSL statement: U.S. government and their media lackeys must respect Venezuela's democracy. Uh, Written by or published by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, July 29th, 2024. All right, so it's a few days past. There's a lot that has developed since then, but I think it's still relevant and worth reading. Photo is of President Nicolas Maduro celebrates with thousands of supporters on election night. All right. Before the votes were even counted, the U.S. government and their loyal servants in the corporate media were already pushing the evidence-free assertion that Venezuela's presidential election results were fraudulent. Because Nicolas Maduro emerged victorious over Washington's preferred candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, the and, political and media elite are now doing everything they can to discredit Venezuelan democracy and set the stage for an internal political crisis that they hope will lead to regime change. As we publish this statement, violent protests have begun to break out as part of this imperialist orchestrated destabilization. Without citing any specifics, Secretary of State Blinken remarked last night, quote, "We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will of the votes of the Venezuelan people," end quote. Kamala Harris was unable to refer to the announced result because she did not even wait for it to be published. She stated, quote, "The United States stands with the people of Venezuela who expressed their voice in today's historic presidential election. The will of the Venezuelan people must be respected," end quote. The implication here was that there could be no doubt that voters had in fact chosen the opposition, and if electoral authorities announced anything else, then it must be contrary to the will of Venezuelans. Nearly every major corporate media outlet based in the United States and other Western countries covered the story based around the same basic narrative, a result that couldn't possibly be true. If any evidence at all is being cited to back up the right wing's claims of fraud, it is biased. It is ludicrously biased pre-election surveys conducted by opposition-aligned polling companies that suggested Gonzalez had higher support. What we are witnessing is a familiar pattern in the U.S. campaign to overthrow the Bolivarian Revolution, the process of socialist transformation that began with the election of Hugo Chavez in 1998. When the U.S. government thinks that the right-wing opposition has a chance of succeeding at the ballot box, then they participate in elections. When they lose the vote, they turn back to street violence and coup attempts. The media presentation of Venezuelan opposition as lovers of democracy is ridiculous in light of their long record of anti-democratic activities. In 2002, a military coup supported by many of the same politicians leading the opposition today briefed the Chamber of Commerce. In 2003, big business owners aligned with the opposition considered to shut down the economy and induced an artificial depression. In 2014, the opposition organized riots across the country, setting up roadblocks where acts of violence, including decapitations, were carried out to cause chaos. Another round of violence in 2017 involved infamous crimes like the murder of Afro-Venezuelan government supporter Orlando Figuera, who was set on fire by anti-government protesters. Then, with the support of Donald Trump, they decreed in 2019 that Juan Guaido, a politician who the vast majority of Venezuelans had never heard of, was in fact the country's president and would be assuming control of the government. Spanning the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations, the U.S. government has waged an escalating economic war on Venezuela, targeting especially the critical oil export sector that has caused tremendous suffering among the people. This is what is at the root of the mass migration of Venezuelans to other parts of the world, including the United States. The strategists of the U.S. empire hoped they could force Venezuelans to buckle under the pressure and vote for the opposition in the hopes that this would lead to the lifting of sanctions. What is free and fair about forcing a country to choose its leaders under these circumstances, with a gun to their head, but ultimately, effectively with a gun to their head? But ultimately, this extortion was not successful. There are many reasons why Venezuelans would vote to re-elect President Maduro despite the economic hardships. Fraud is not the, quote, only explanation, end quote. Support for Bolivarian revolution is deeply rooted. It is a long-term project for the empowerment of Venezuela's poor and working people and the exercise of true sovereignty independent from the Washington and Wall Street elites that have historically controlled the country. A large section of Venezuelan society is firm in the conviction that it is better to endure severe difficulties in their daily lives then go back to being a de facto colony of the United States. And these difficult circumstances have been improving as an economic recovery gathers momentum. The economy returned to growth in 2022. Inflation has moderated to single-digit figures, and oil production is steadily rising. On top of this, many voters were turned off that the most extreme right-wing elements of the opposition, led by oligarch Maria Corina Machado, dominated the González campaign. Venezuela has a professional and transparent electoral process with many layers of fraud protection. Citizens cast their vote on electronic machines, but are then given a paper receipt as well. The paper receipts are audited to check the accuracy of the electronic machines, and representatives from all campaigns observe the process. Vote rigging at the massive scale being alleged by the opposition would be so obvious that evidence could be found everywhere. In the absence of this evidence, opponents of the Bolivarian Revolution are reduced to a Trump-style strategy where baseless claims about fraud are repeated endlessly until they become accepted as an article of faith. Instead of stirring up violence and instability, the U.S. government should end the cruel economic war and lift all sanctions on Venezuela. Venezuelans have spoken. They want to continue the Bolivian Revolution. Bolivarian the Bolivarian Revolution. Under the leadership of President Nicolas Maduro, politicians in Washington and a tiny handful of elite Venezuelan families should not have a veto over the will of the majority. Yep, that's pretty much it. So much said. Hashtag anti-imperialism, hashtag international solidarity, hashtag Venezuela. Yeah, why is the U.S. or any other state or country for that matter getting in the business of Venezuela? Like, why all these interventions? Obviously for their personal benefit. If any revolution comes to Venezuela, it will come from the people, just like in Haiti, just like in anywhere else. If the people decide that they want the president out because they're tired of the corruption, that's up to them. But that doesn't seem to be the case with Venezuela right now. The president does not seem to be corrupt. Like all governments, I'm sure there's a lot of issues and a few corrupt hands. But uh, Venezuela has learned from its history. Uh, their education is still strong. It seems like Maduro and the government has decided to keep continuing funding education for all in Venezuela, as well as I hear as higher education. So uh, there's basic social programs that the government is providing to maintain the people afloat, perhaps not in luxury, but surviving and in reasonable, I guess, state of living. So if they want to continue this way, it's up to them. And if America really wants to prove that socialism doesn't work, then maybe it should drop all the sanctions, get the hell out of other people's houses, and let them do their thing. Uh, don't forget that their attempts at coups failed in Vietnam, and they're going to fail here. Uh, just like most of their coups fail. Even the mess that they're trying in Ukraine seems to be an epic failure right now. That coup backfired. Don't forget that the Ukraine coup in 2014 was a soft coup funded by the U.S. and it's not going so well for Ukraine, is it? Um, so uh, let them have their sovereignty, let them have their independence, and let the people figure it out with their government. Um, Maybe then American citizens that are so gung-ho about kicking out immigrants can stop complaining about immigrants. So as far as I see it, if an immigrant's in need, they should come. Period. That is my stoic view. That is my leftist view. And if you don't want them to come, then stop stealing the resources, stop interfering in their elections, stop making them poor. Unless you have no moral compass and don't care and just have this survival of the fittest mentality where it's like a natural selection, which it wouldn't be because, I mean, Most Republicans are Christians, I believe, or some kind of religious uh, Christianity. Uh, but that's another thing to talk about. That's a whole other issue. It's just there's so much hypocrisy in this American trying to distribute freedom and democracy. Like, mind your goddamn business. Stay out of other people's elections. And that goes the same for any of the southern countries that are trying to put pressure on Venezuela right now. Let Venezuela do its thing. Stop meddling in their elections. Nobody meddle in yours. Uh, if the people want revolution, if the people want change, they will bring it from the inside. Cool. All right, let's move along. Maybe I should read all the ones that are from July, and then I can read August's later. All right, let's see here. These articles aren't too long actually, so it's good. I'm gonna take a break, get a Halls, be right back. All right, I'm back. Let me do an audio check. Make sure all is good. Check, check, 1, 2. All is good. All right. Let's move along here. Let's move along, yeah? I've been deciding what else to do with the background or with the lighting. Don't know yet. I don't know yet. All right. Project 2025, Fast Track to Climate Chaos. Photo, a protest at COP28 in Dubai. Credit Flickr, Media Ninja. Cool pick. Uh, article by Tina Landis, July 30th, 2024. Tina Landis is an author of the book Climate Solutions Beyond Capitalism. This article is part of a Liberation News series exploring the different facets of Project 2025. Project 2025 is a comprehensive plan assembled by the leading figures of the right-wing elite, laying out how a future Trump administration would shred the civil and economic rights won in the 1930s and 60s. Read the series' inaugural article for an overview of the project and its significance. Climate change is undeniable. Extreme weather events and triple-digit heat waves are worsening each year, with each of the last 10 years breaking heat records globally. Although the United States has yet to take any meaningful action that meets the urgency of the climate crisis, Project 2025 reverses what little action has been taken and goes full steam into the opposite direction. Although I wasn't alive at the time, many may remember when the Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught on fire due to the high levels of pollutants dumped by industry straight into the river. At the same time, in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, air quality levels were based on the intensity of burning you felt in your eyes. And on many days, residents couldn't hang laundry outside to dry because it became visibly dirty again from air pollution. This was the 1960s, just before the Environmental Protection Agency was formed and legislation like the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Endangered Species Act, and National Environmental Policy Act were passed that hindered corporations from releasing pollution unchecked. This nightmarish past will be our future if Project 2025 were to be implemented. Pollution is the result of capitalism. The system inherently requires maximization of profits, endless growth of markets, and increasing investments to the shareholder class. This means corporations will always look for ways to cut costs, whether through poverty wages, outsourcing production, or not bothering with costly pollution controls in their facilities. The EPA, which has been purposely weakened over the decades, starting with the funding cuts of Reagan, still plays a crucial role in regulating pollution from industry through fines and emission control requirements. Project 2025 is an attack on people and the planet and would override Endangered Species Act protections and requirements for environmental reviews under the National Environmental Policy Act. The plan would severely limit the EPA and Department of Interior's ability to reduce methane emissions and environmental pollutants and to conduct climate research. Also on the chopping block are protections for public health and environmental justice. Project 2025 would also eliminate the endangerment finding that allows the EPA to cut the emissions from vehicles and industry under the Clean Air Act. The plan would undermine EPA efforts to designate PFAS, now a common pollutant in U.S. drinking water and soil, as hazardous chemicals, and would also limit power under the Toxic Substances Control Act to assess the cumulative impact of chemicals on the population. In general, the project would remove career scientists at the federal level, meaning staff who have scientific. Let me read that again. In general, the project would remove career scientists at the federal level, meaning staff who have scientific integrity and are qualified to serve in their positions with far-right political appointees. The Department of Energy could no longer work on any climate-related research and development, such as renewable energy, battery storage, and other climate technologies. The plan would also eliminate standards for energy efficiency in appliances. The plan would stop the development of solar and wind energy systems, which on top of the Biden administration's 50% tariff on solar cells from China, would bring the already slow U.S. transition to renewables to a screeching halt. Oil and gas production, which has actually increased under the Biden administration despite initial executive orders that limited drilling on public lands, would be ramped up even more under Project 2025. The plan would undo the permanent protections on the national petroleum reserves in Alaska, expand Arctic drilling, and trample on any remaining indigenous land rights. The plan would revive coal production and also ramp up liquefied natural gas production, which consumes immense amounts of energy to produce. The project would also dismantle the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which leads the nation on weather, ocean, climate, and fisheries science. Under NOAA is the National Weather Service, which Project 2025 states should focus only on commercial operations. NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research would be downsized and eliminate any climate research. The majority of privately run weather services currently source their data from NWS, which provides warnings about tornadoes, floods, heat waves, and other extreme weather events. Without forecasting data from the NWS, the U.S. population would be at even greater risk of increasingly dangerous weather. Project 2025 also plans to eliminate the National Flood Insurance Program, leaving populations who live in vulnerable areas that private insurers refuse to cover with no safety net. The plan also shifts responsibility for natural disasters from the federal government to the states, meaning residents in poorer states will have little to no disaster relief in a country that is already sorely lacking in recovery funds. Project 2025 would also cut federal funding to electric vehicle manufacturers and would eliminate emission standards in the transportation sector. Although vehicle manufacturers tend to tailor their production to California standards in order to sell to this major market, the reduction in national standards allows for an increase in greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector while potentially exposing communities near high traffic areas to higher pollution levels. The project would also eviscerate Department of Agriculture food safety protections and controls over Big Ag's takeover of our food systems. It would eliminate already weak regulations on pesticide and GMO use, as well as cut programs that support farmers who are implementing environmentally sustainable practices. We are already teetering on the brink of surpassing 1.5 Celsius warming globally, which spells catastrophe. The United States surpasses all other countries for its contribution to the warming planet through the highest cumulative emissions since the Industrial Revolution and the largest share of emissions per capita today, and that's on top of the US military as the biggest institutional fossil fuel consumer on the planet. Project 2025 shifts this already disastrous trajectory into higher gear. A Carbon Brief report shows that Project 2025 will lead to 400 billion metric tons of additional carbon emissions in the United States by 2030, which equals the combined emissions of the European Union and Japan. Project 2025 is an attack on science as a mean to remove any regulatory barriers to corporate profits, regardless of what it means for the health of residents or the planet's ability to sustain life as we know it. But there's another factor at play that has the power to stop the implementation of Project 2025 and win real climate action no matter who is in the White House. That is us, the people organized. We must fight to defend the environmental protection we have and to win the transformations that are needed for our survival. It was the people's movement that won the environmental protections of the 1970s, and we can do it again. But this time, we need to overthrow the capitalist system itself that will always try to overturn any gains made in order to maximize profits at our expense. We must fight for socialism, where meeting the needs of the society and the planet are the priority. A system run by and for the people that can utilize the knowledge and tools that already exist to solve the climate crisis. Rewards the most ghoulish, and capitalism's main objectives is profit at all costs. So, uh, in summary, my analysis to this article, very based. Project 2025 to me can also be considered Republicans' agenda in Project 2021, Project 2016. They do this all the time. They act like science is like a faith that you don't have to believe in it, uh, but they act like religion is a science that it, can't be disproven or something. It's ridiculous. They're bananas. Don't listen to them, folks. Um, Science is very easy to prove. Uh, it's part of physics. It's part of uh, uh, health. It's part of agriculture. It's all parts of sciences are important and should be studied and understood if possible. Um, you don't need religion or faith. You need science in order for advancement. And then we can go into other philosophical arguments about do we need to advance? Do we need to believe in God? But here, what this article is talking about is about Project 2025 uh, and how this is like the ratchet effect, right? Like they always put somebody worse on the right ticket so that you have to vote for the centrist Republican on the Democratic ticket. Um, but in the end, when it comes down to it, when there's a boiling point, it's always the people that gather together and make change. It's always the people that have gathered together, whether it was the Republican or the Democratic Party in charge. It was always the people gathered together, united in solidarity, working class, the proletariat, working together to demand change. And that's how it's always going to be because people in power do not relinquish power easily. Uh, but the greatest thing that we have is our strength in numbers and our labor. If we all decide to stop working, then they have to listen to us. But it takes a collaboration, it takes education, it takes mobilization, it takes great leaders and organizers to unite people. And this is what the left has to develop more on. Okay, so let's move along to the next article. Hmm. Sorry, I'm chewing on this cough drop. It's necessary, but all right, here we go. Uh, Audio looks good. President Maduro's victory and the revolution under fire by U.S. imperialism. Article by Gloria La Riva, July 30th, 2024. 5-minute read. The photo is people in Caracas, Venezuela cheer on Nicolas Maduro's victory speech. Credit Zoe Alexandra. Despite re-election victory for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on Sunday, certified by the National Electoral Commission (CNE), right-wing opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez immediately claimed fraud and refused to accept the result, setting in motion a violent outbreak in the streets. This is not a spontaneous attack, but a planned, multi-form operation whose author is the CIA. At 6 p.m. on Monday, right-wing extremist Maria Corina Machado held a press conference with Gonzalez, claiming that a fantastical 73% of votes for him with no proof or evidence and no way for the opposition to have counted ballots in a day, as she claimed. The official CNE count is Nicolas Maduro's 51.2%, or 5,150,092 votes. Gonzalez received 44.2% of the votes, or 4,445,978, a difference of 700,000 for 114 votes. Voter turnout was 59%. Hours before the polls opened, the CNE was hit by a major hacking operation. CNE President Elvis Almoroso demanded an investigation into the terrorist hit. The CNE's system is not connected to the internet, which protected the voting operation, but it delayed the announcements of the results. Attorney General Tariq William Saab publicly accused right-wing activist Lester Toledo of their terrorist attack, which originated from North Macedonia. Leopoldo Lopez and Maria Corina Machado were named as accomplices. The violence broke out at the same time pro-U.S. government in the region quickly denounced the election results. Venezuela's foreign ministry has expelled diplomats from Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Peru, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and Uruguay due to their hostility towards Venezuela's process. The government also issued a communique to announce the elimination of flights to and from Panama and Dominican Republic starting Wednesday, July 31st, 8 p.m. The leaders of Cuba, Nicaragua, China, Russia, and Honduras congratulated Maduro's victory. 9 Latin American countries have called for an emergency OAS session, undoubtedly to act against Maduro's government. Roaming gangs started waging violent attacks in the streets on Monday, looting and burning buildings, including a hospital in the Chaco district of Caracas. At least one statue of revolutionary leader Hugo Chavez was toppled in La Guaira state. As right-wing forces began to march to Miraflores presidential palace, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, PSUV, called on supporters to surround and defend Miraflores from attack. PSUV Vice President Diosdado Cabello addressed a crowd of supporters who remained overnight inside palace grounds. Quote, "If they want to generate violence, they will find us here. They will find us ready to defend the palace, the revolution, the constitution, and the victory of President Nicolas Maduro, which is the victory of Chavez and our people, end quote, Cabello said. Quote, we are calm, end quote, he continued. Quote, it is they who are looking for violence. We don't want violence, but we know how to defend ourselves and to pass immediately to counterattack, end quote. President Maduro denounced the perpetrators. Quote, they ordered attacks on the offices of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. What is that called? Terrorism. They attacked and burned CNE offices and damaged machinery. Some of those actively involved were captured, and they confessed they were paid, end quote. Quote, we have told the PSUV members not to fall for provocations because their objective in attacking the offices is to create a bloodbath, end quote, Maduro stated. Washington's role hardly a mystery. This conflict has been brewing for months, with the U.S. determined to topple the Bolivian revolutionary government either by vote or violence. It is not the first time, just the latest. The most notorious was the U.S. refusal to recognize Maduro's second inauguration on January 10, 2019. 13 days later, a relatively unknown politician, Juan Guaido, suddenly appeared before the press to name himself Venezuela's new president. The fiction lasted several years, as the country's Citgo oil company assets, gold, and money deposits were stolen by the U.S. with Guaido's acquiescence. Oil revenues, which financed the government's spending, plunged 99%, and inflation reached 334,000%. More than 970 economic sanctions have been imposed by the Trump and now Biden administration. The U.S. economic war has devastated the population's living standards, but of course, the revolutionary government is blamed. In a sheer act of hypocrisy, Biden last October granted legality to 500,000 Venezuelans who have recently arrived in the United States. Hold on, let me read that again. In a sheer act of hypocrisy, Biden last October granted legality to 500,000 Venezuelans who have recently arrived in the United States. This order gives them immediate permission to work with permanent residency after 1 year. His tactic was to strangle the country with sanctions, then entice Venezuelans to leave en masse for the United States. It is very similar to U.S. policy toward Cuba. And yet, through sheer determination of people organized in collectives and communes, with the government support of the agriculture industry, national food production has largely replaced imports. A new coup opportunity. Venezuela's presidential elections are held every 5 years. July 28th was chosen for this year's election, the 70th anniversary of Hugo Chávez's birth. He died in 2013. Washington employed the carrot and stick tactic to Maduro's government months ahead, offering to ease up on some sanctions if Venezuelans would permit a right-wing candidate, neo-fascist Maria Corina Machado, to run. But she was banned from running due to a conviction for representing another government in her capacity as National Assembly delegate. So she joined forces with Gonzalez and in reality became the de facto candidate. During the campaign, Machado promised to, quote, do away with socialism forever, end quote, to privatize Venezuela's oil industry, and to give title to the residents of the 5.1 million homes built by the Bolivarian Revolution. Currently, most of the new homes are given for free as long as residents live there. Machado's proposal, the right to sell one's home, can be attractive to anyone feeling the economic blows of sanctions. Real estate developers and banks would stand ready to take over the newly privatized properties. As leader of the ultra-right Vente Venezuela party, Corina Machado is notorious for urging violence. She openly called for the overthrow of the government during the most violent times in 2017, and at one point in 2018 she asked for Israel to invade, quote, and rescue, end quote, Venezuela. Machado, acting on behalf of U.S. imperialist interests, could declare a, quote, parallel government, end quote, that would be recognized by the Biden administration, a pretext to impose deeper sanctions by the U.S. and other Western powers. The danger of military invasion is not to be discounted. The genocide in Gaza, the U.S.-fueled war in Ukraine, the blockade of Cuba, U.S. preparations for war with China and Russia, growing military presence in Africa, this is the true nature of U.S. imperialism. All talk of democracy and freedom is simply code for world imperial domination. What takes place in Venezuela will have earth-shaking consequences. All progressive forces in the world must take an active stand with the excuse me, with the Bolivarian revolution of Venezuela and its socialist aspirations. Yeah, man. Again, like I said, all this intervention is nonsense. The article explains all the tricks that America uses to try to impose different ideals on the people of Venezuela. Uh, Personally, if I were poor and they were to give me a free home, that would be my dude. I would never stop voting for that guy. And those are the people that are out there defending him, and rightfully so. Uh, giving somebody a home so that they are not paying a mortgage for 40 to 50 years, as they do here in America, that is a form of freedom. To have somewhere to live safely. Uh, what you have here, capitalism, is like it's pretty much slavery, like three raccoons in a trench coat. Um, all right. Let's see what else we have. Oh man, my idea of Machado, it's crazy because you see these videos of Machado speaking all the time, and it's like she's the one always speaking, like she's the one running for president. And based on all of the allegations of all the things that she's done that have been proven that she has done, lady should be in jail. Arrest that lady. Send her to the gulag. That's what I say. Anyways, well, this article was written about a week ago, July 30th. It's August 7th already, and I don't know, man. I don't know how far it's gonna go, but I still hear every day. I still hear Western imperialist channels talking about how this is fraud, how Maduro is a dictator. No, it was an election. Uh, Dictatorships is what you do here in America, with your false sense of democracy, with your false sense of elections. Uh, Gario, it's a plutocracy here. Anyone thinking otherwise, you're living in La La Land. All right, let's move along. All right, so let me check the audio one more time. Audio 1212. Audio is good. I think for today I'm going to finish here on the July 31st article, and maybe I'll do one, two, three, four. These four articles tomorrow, to be all caught up with the week. Yeah, let's try that. Ooh, women make the Bolivarian Revolution. The Bolivarian Revolution lives on. I really want to read these two today, actually. These are also relevant, so important. It's hard not to read them, but let's just move forward. All right. Next article is called Anchorage Movement Forces Release of Body Cam Footage in Police Killings. Article by Kyle Leadbetter, July 31st, 2024. As this article was being prepared for publication on July 31st, the Handy shooting footage was released. The video footage does not show Chris Handy pointing his gun at police before they killed him in a hail of bullets, many of which hit apartment buildings in the vicinity. On July 16th, the Anchorage Assembly passed AR number 2024-210S, or the, quote, Handy Resolution, end quote, calling for the release of police body-worn camera footage in all instances of police killings. The resolution is non-binding, but sends a powerful message to Anchorage's new mayor Suzanne LaFrance, and new APD chief Sean Case. This victory demonstrates the growing power of the community movement for police accountability in Anchorage, in the face of Anchorage Police Department killings of residents with apparent impunity. In May and June, APD shot 5 Anchorage residents, killing 3. The first victim of this spree was Chris Handy, killed on May 13th, only 2 weeks after the mayor had appointed a new chief of police. The police report stated that Handy was carrying a gun and had pointed it at officers, forcing them to shoot and kill him. Several days later, Handy's neighbor bravely published security footage from their house that contradicted the police statement. Handy was carrying a shotgun, but the weapon was not being pointed at the police prior to his being killed. Bashar Hassan. APD's transparency problem did not start in 2024. Bashar Hassan was a Somali refugee killed by the APD in April of 2019 for carrying a BB gun. He was suffering from mental illness and not violating any laws when the police were called on him. APD shot him 21 times, and he laid on the ground for 2 minutes before any officers moved towards his body or attempted any medical aid. These facts are only known because they were captured on the dash cam of one of the police cruisers. APD did not voluntarily release this footage. It was released in 2022 as part of the Hassan family's wrongful death suit after APD charged the family $5,500 in order to release the footage. The struggle for body-worn cameras. In July of 2021, the citizens of Anchorage passed a ballot measure that allocated several million dollars towards the purchase of body-worn cameras for APD. This was after Anchorage teenager Dalen Polu was shot and killed by APD, and his mother called for police officers to be equipped with BWC. The vote for BWC was clearly a political outcome of the 2020 national uprising against racism. This was also the same election that brought in Mayor Dave Bronson, Republican, who won the election, promising to close homeless shelters and get rid of COVID-19 precautions. The body camera policy clearly had broad appeal among the people of Anchorage. Several years passed with no progress on actually acquiring cameras. APD was given additional funds for new squad cars and headquarters renovations, and spent those promptly. They claimed that it took them until the end of 2023 to outfit the first set of officers with cameras. The Party for Socialism and Liberation in Anchorage held regular rallies calling for the police department to release a schedule and pressuring the Anchorage municipality to follow through on the ballot measure, organizing and fighting back. A crucial point of the BWC policy developed by APD after passage of the 2021 initiative is that the chief of police has sole discretion in releasing the footage. This is undemocratic and widely unpopular. Now that APD is finally outfitted with body cameras, the issue has immediately come to a head. Bronson appointed Bianca Cross as chief of police on April 30th. This appointment was controversial as Bronson appointed Cross in the midst of a mayoral runoff election campaign, which Bronson would go on to lose. Chief Cross claimed that footage would be released, quote, when the investigation had concluded, end quote. However, a neighbor of Chris Handy released doorbell footage of APD shooting and killing Handy. This footage contradicted statements made by Cross at a press conference and also ignited mass calls for, quote, justice for Chris, end quote. APD was left with a clear dilemma. Statements from the department clearly contradicted the footage that all citizens could see, and it seems likely that their body camera footage would also contradict the department statements. Popular energy was swelling around more transparent policing. There were calls from the Handy family and other community members, including the PSL, to release the BWC footage and for civilian oversight of APD. Between the time when Handy was killed in May and July of this year, APD shot 4 more Anchorage residents. 2 of the victims were killed. The Anchorage municipal government has been put under immense pressure from victims' families and community and PSL Anchorage. PSL Anchorage has also advanced the demand that Anchorage established an independent police review board. A review board would investigate and recommend action in response to citizen grievances. The capitalist police force is allowed to run amok, and when the workers ask for crumbs of justice, they are often given nothing. Elements of the Anchorage working class came together to agitate for justice and support the families who have lost loved ones to APD. In May of this year, the Handy family, with assistance and support from PSL Anchorage, held a large protest in downtown Anchorage. Around 100 people participated. Handy resolution. Following the May 25th protest, the Handy family publicly demanded that the Anchorage Assembly pass a resolution calling for the immediate release of all BWC footage. The quote, Handy resolution, end quote, was a victory for the Anchorage working class. It demonstrated that the people can organize and win. The quote, Handy resolution, end quote, resulted in Chief Case changing APD policy around the release of BWC footage. Though the change in policy still shields APD from accountability, the Anchorage politicians have been forced to address the mass calls for civilian oversight of APD. Chris Handy's murder laid bare a glaring contradiction in Anchorage. APD is the most powerful, best-funded entity in the Anchorage government, and the chief of police is the most powerful executive in the city. However, the working class was able to organize and achieve a victory against police terror and to make a large gain for the people. Hashtag Alaska, hashtag Anchorage, hashtag police brutality. Forgot hashtag ACAB. ACAB. All cats are beautiful. Um, so, yeah, man, this proves here time and time again that the police are not on your side because they are not trained to be on your side. They are trained to defend and protect capital. And the once in a while that they come to your aid, they're usually late. Let's not forget that police only solve about 5% of the crimes that are reported. Uh, we can get more into the police state, but let's stick more to the camera issues here. Uh, so the issue with the police cameras is that if they have control of the cameras, they have control of what they show you, then they have control of the messaging, right? So if we're going to have police cameras, which have not reduced police violence across the U.S., it has only continued to increase because of increased police budgeting. Um, what is fair is for all this police data, these police reports, these police cameras to be in the open for everyone to access. If you have nothing to hide, then the truth will set you free, right? So um, the police should release the camera footage. And there should be a lot more legislation, policy changes to make the police accounted. My fair dialectical and leftist view is that the police should be abolished, the prison system should be abolished, and something more productive should be put in its place to actually support, rehabilitate the poor people in lower level classes and the working class and the United States people in general. This can be done. Uh, but it is not done because, again, capitalism is about profit first, and the most ghoulish are rewarded the most. Unfortunately, this is not a system that works for humanity. This is not a moral system uh, from a Stoic perspective. Uh, this is not justice. This does not support the four pillars of Stoicism, which are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. When you train police officers to unload 21 bullets on one person, you are not training them to defend anybody. You are training them to kill people indiscriminately. So if you were to tell me, hey, we landed one bullet on him, and in fact, why are police officers using very dangerous, high caliber bullets? I believe they are 38s, the bullets they use. Why not use 21s? I think they're 21s or 22 caliber bullets, the smaller ones. I mean, you don't load a few of those on somebody, they probably won't die, but they're going to go through a rough time, and you're going to be able to control them better. Um, but no, man, these police, they're shooting people indiscriminately. Uh, it's horrendous. This is not the way humanity should be. Uh, we're thriving technologically, but declining morally. This is just not an actual advancement of humanity, and that is what us as leftists and me personally as a Stoic looks for: advancements in humanity, in being virtuous, because being virtuous it's its own reward. Okay, I won't get too much more into that. Let's see here. Sonia Macy, we read that last week. Let's see if this is a short article. I do want to keep reading. I'm on a roll here. This is a short one. All right. This next article is titled Women Make the Bolivarian Revolution. Article by Jody Dean, August 2nd, 2024. Photo credit Zoe Alexandra. Reprinted from Breaking the Chains. Poor and working class women have long been the base of the Bolivarian Revolution. The first in the streets to fight back against the U.S.-sponsored coup in 2002, they saved the revolution. They saw Hugo Chavez as an extension of their own struggle for survival. Chavez understood saying, quote, "Socialists must be feminists, or they won't be complete human beings," end quote. Today, Venezuelan women continue to lead the way in the struggle to defend the revolution, the Venezuelan constitution, and their democracy. President Nicolas Maduro was re-elected on Sunday, July 28th, with the mass support of the Venezuelan people. The U.S. is determined to topple the Bolivarian revolutionary government and discredit Venezuelan democracy, but the Chavistas have vowed to defend the revolution against an opposition that won't admit it lost. Women play a crucial role in Venezuela's election. They were the leaders of over 200,000 neighborhood units organized by the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, PSUV, as part of its electoral strategy in the 2024 presidential election. Across the country, they woke up their friends and their neighbors early in the morning of July 28th, making sure that they voted and brought 10 other people with them. Venezuelan women have good reason to get out the vote for socialism. The Bolivarian Revolution has made securing women's equality into state policy by establishing a Ministry of People's Power for Women and Gender Equality. One of the tasks of this ministry is ending centuries of patriarchal attitudes and practices. Article 88 of the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, approved by popular referendum in 1999, recognized care work as economically productive. Women, Chavez said, quote, "work so hard raising their children, ironing, washing, preparing food, giving their children an orientation. This was never recognized as work, yet it is such hard work. Now the revolution puts you first. You too are workers. You housewives, workers in the home," end quote. Article 88 also enshrined the equality of women and men in exercising the right to work. The Bolivarian Revolution has taken two major steps in combating violence against women. One step is, quote, "the organic law of the right of women to a life free of violence," end quote, which was passed in 2007. This law mandates protective measures for victims of gender-based violence. It also extends the period of detention for those accused of committing such violence. A second step is the establishment of communal defenders, women trained to prevent gender-based violence and support victims. Communal defenders organize in their local communes and maintain channels of communication with the Ministry of People's Power for Women and Gender Equality. Venezuela's over 3,000 communes are central to the building of Bolivarian socialism. These self-organized units are sites of economic production, political participation, and community life. 80% of Venezuelans involved in the commune movement are women. Some of the communes explicitly understand their project as communal feminism, an important contrast to the individualistic liberal feminism promoted by the elite women and backed by U.S. imperialism. According to women from the March 5th commune, quote, when we talk about women's networks, we are talking about the fabric we weave every day, one by one, but which are intertwined with other people's fabrics, with other people's threads and yarns, no matter how many kilometers they have between them. End quote. The 936 sanctions against Venezuela from the U.S. and its allies have had a devastating impact on Venezuelan society, dramatically increasing poverty. Women's work has been indispensable to the country's ability to survive these brutal policies. It has even enabled Venezuela to turn adversity into opportunity by ending reliance on foreign food sources and becoming virtually food sovereign. Forced to return to subsistence farming, Venezuelan producers diversified their crops in order to meet basic needs. Maiden Mendoza of the Born to Triumph with Chavez commune in Apure state described how their communal seed bank, quote, aims to break dependency of the government and the capitalist market, end quote. The project gives them autonomy and security because production is in their own hands. Her commune is part of their communal economic circuit that produces beans, meat, corn, and cheese. Mendoza explained, quote, the blockade has been terrifying at times. The White House is set on toppling our government by any means, and it is no secret that their policies have set us back years in terms of our material well-being. However, it is also true that the hardship has made us more resilient and more committed to the communal project. Chavez wasn't wrong. The commune is the only way to build a better world, end quote. On October 25, 2023, President Nicolas Maduro launched the, quote, Great Venezuelan Women's Mission, end quote. It focuses on women's health, education, economic independence, freedom from violence, and political participation. The victory of the Bolivarian Revolution is a victory for all poor and working class women. They show that another world is possible, a communal world of solidarity and people's sovereignty. Yeah, so it is great and very important that if you're a socialist, you're also a feminist, but a socialist feminist. That's a great point because you have liberal feminism, which is just pretty much get your own bread kind of capitalist feminism, which leaves behind a lot of poor feminists, like black women, minorities, women that are disadvantaged in general. So it is a proven fact that diversifying your crops yields better results every year for farming, and it makes you independent from the market because you don't have to necessarily shop uh, when you're growing your own food. You know, I mean, if you grow your own tomatoes, uh, I think one stalk of tomatoes is enough to support one person for the whole year, as long as it's yielding good tomatoes, right? I'm not saying that's all you're going to be eating, but yeah, when you think about how if people, even if in the United States, if everybody got into farming and just farmed, I don't know, one product or two products in their home, uh, it would be so much greater than always going to the grocery store for that one product, right? And it doesn't take much effort to take care of one plant. Um, but anyways, back to the article. Yeah, this is really important. Like all the articles, it's a very important article to create and to show different aspects of how Venezuela is thriving or trying to thrive and fighting imperialism and maintaining its sovereignty. I hope the Venezuelan experiment really does yield great results like it's yielding in Vietnam, for example. Now, I am not a fully knowledge on Vietnam, as well as I'm not fully knowledge in Venezuela. But from what I'm seeing, if the sanctions can be removed and Venezuela is left to its own, then it will thrive as intended. Unfortunately, America will get to make no profits off of it, but it shouldn't. Uh, anyways, yeah, I think that's great. Great article. Uh, that's what I got out of that. The communes are a very interesting thing. Women living free of violence. That's very important as well. Um, I think men that are socialist feminists are less likely to be violent, and they will try to produce better results for women, and they will understand their struggles as well as their own. This is not to say that violence will be eradicated. There will always be some sort of violence because we are human. This is just what happens, but it would be controlled, and it can be better to rehabilitate someone that is willing to be rehabilitated, someone that has, per se, an understanding of dialectical materialism, of stoicism, and who is willing to understand that errors are made and that they can uh, correct their errors through either, through what generally the left would call restorative justice, which is a process of rehabilitation and restoration for victims instead of jail time, which really helps nobody except the prison industrial complex. All right, let's see here. Man, another article on PGE negligence, huh? Interesting. This one says Kamala Harris and Big Money, who are the corporate supporters for. All right, maybe I can finish here for today. This is so recent and ongoing, and I think it's good to keep updated with these. All right, for sure. I'm gonna read this one and I'm done because it's a long one too, 5 minutes. Let me check the audio again. Maybe I should put this light up here. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps. Anyways, audio check 1 2 1 2. Audio's good. All right, let's start. Last article. The Bolivian Revolution lives on. Popular democracy in Venezuela. Article by Annie Viloria Winnet and Desmond Fonseca. August 2nd, 2024. Photo is of Venezuelans celebrating the re-election of Nicolas Maduro. Credit Zoe Alexandra. All right, I'll take my time on this one. On July 28th, on what would have been the 70th birthday of Hugo Chavez, the Venezuelan people voted to continue the Bolivarian revolution he initiated by re-electing Nicolas Maduro as president. In a repeat of coup attempts in 2002, 2014, and 2018, the defeated right wing has refused to recognize, without evidence, the legitimacy of the elections and have called on violent mobs, infamously known as, quote, guarimbas, end quote, to take to the streets and overthrow the democratically elected president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. For years, the right wing in Venezuela, which has been cheered on by imperialist governments like the United States and mainstream media like the New York Times, have claimed that Bolivarian revolution of Chavez and Maduro is anti-democratic and that the Venezuelan people clamor for change after 25 years of Chavismo. But what is the real story? In the lead of to and immediate aftermath of Venezuela's elections, there were nearly 1,000 international observers from over 100 countries that witnessed the country's democratic process, a fact often ignored by the mainstream media. As witnesses to the democratic process, we were able to see firsthand the reality of life in Bolivarian Venezuela, debunk the tired lies recycled in mainstream media, and get a glimpse into the far-right violence currently underway. No matter how hard they try, including setting up targeted roadblocks to stop international observers from reaching the airports, the far right can't hide the reality of Venezuelan popular democracy. While this election is a particularly significant one for the future of the Bolivarian Revolution, voting is no rare occurrence in Venezuela. Government officials and community organizers both celebrate the fact that this election will be the 31st held in Venezuela since the start of the revolution 25 years ago. This is in stark contrast to, quote, democracy, end quote, in the U.S., where citizens can expect to vote at most once every 2 years. Venezuelans regularly turn out for presidential elections, national assembly elections, constituent assembly elections, constitutional reform elections, and even to democratically decide what community projects should be prioritized for state funding. And how are these elections conducted? Voting in Venezuela is nearly fraud-proof, as voters go through several steps to cast their ballot, first providing their fingerprint, then voting on a digital machine, which then prints a receipt of the voter's selection that is physically entered into a ballot box, creating dual verification for accurate vote tallies and a robust audit system. Further, the Bolivarian government has gone to great lengths to expand voter access across the country, creating hundreds of voting centers in rural and working-class oppressed communities, which have historically been disproportionately black and indigenous. It is these same communities which have been the backbone of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, or PSUV for its Spanish abbreviation. Support for the last 25 years, from its inception in 2007 by then-President Hugo Chavez, the PSUV has brought together a political coalition committed to upholding the Bolivarian Revolution as a process of peaceful transition to socialism in the 21st century, a socialism that is anti-imperialist at its core. The electoral victories of the PSUV over the last 25 years are the direct result of broad and deep organizing in the most marginalized, rural, and impoverished communities. Following the 1 by 10 by 7 formula, the PSUV systemically mobilized the 7 political, social, and cultural forces of the country, such as the local committees for supply and production, CLAPs, indigenous and aboriginal communities, Afro-descendant communities, civic military units, and communes, among others. According to the formula, one PSUV supporter is tasked with mobilizing 10 voters, 7 of whom should represent each of these forces, and 1 of whom should be a new voter. We had the opportunity to visit a mountaintop peasant commune in Carayaca of La Guaira state, a stronghold of Chavismo, where the state has invested in local textile production, bakeries, and agriculture. We also met with representatives from the CLAPs set up by the Maduro government, which are communal food delivery programs created to build local and democratic resilience to the crushing weight of U.S. sanctions, highlighting the brutality of U.S. imperialism. The Trump administration in 2019 explicitly sanctioned companies which were supplying the CLAPs. We also met with community leaders participating in direct communal social ownership enterprises, EPSDC, which are communally owned production units tasked with supplying communities with basic services. The EPSDC model combats the speculation and exploitation inherent in capitalist model, and empowers communities to develop a sustainable supply chain that circumvents the criminal sanctions that will otherwise keep communities from accessing basic services such as gas for cooking. We heard firsthand accounts of how these alternative production, supply, and manufacture models have not only raised communities out of poverty, but have ingrained a political and cultural commitment to the forms of direct democracy that these marginalized communities had not experienced before the Bolivarian Revolution. Beyond increasing people's financial resources and autonomy, the Bolivarian experiment, under the leadership of the PSUV, has committed to build people's power through comunas, the basic unit of political and economic self-governance, where people respond to their own conditions to meet their own needs. This form of self-organization and self-governance stands in sharp opposition to the reality of the United States, where working-class communities have no say in the direction of society where working class communities have no say in the direction of society, of our economy, or even in the identification of our own priorities. What we saw on the ground was undoubtedly a direct challenge to the illusion of, quote, democracy, end quote, we are subjected to under capitalism. The convictions of the Venezuelan people to defend their own path to socialism, reflected in the electoral victories of the PSUV, withstand the challenges of the economic sanctions and media war imposed by imperialism today. Despite the challenges that embarking on this alternative project has brought about, the Venezuelan people are committed to upholding their sovereignty. On the days leading up to Election Day, millions of people in Caracas poured into streets to express their support for President Maduro, chanting slogans such as "No volverá," declaring that imperialism, foreign interference, and neocolonialism, and neocolonialism will not return. On election day, activating their 1 by 10 by 7 formula, PSUV supporters reminded us that direct representative democracy is an everyday task, one that requires genuine conviction and love for its people. When we asked community members what they thought about the media claims about lack of transparency in their elections, they reminded us that it is us in the United States with the Electoral College system who are subjected to a shadow democracy. It is no surprise corporate media and the US government are threatened by a truly sovereign people. The Bolivarian Revolution lives on. Hashtag Latin America. Yeah, and as this article explains well, uh, what the socialist program in Venezuela is trying to do is trying to empower the people, uh, empower their sovereignty, empower the communities, so that they have more of a say of what is necessary in their communities. And the process of democracy is a very delicate process where you have to make a foolproof election, right? Uh, let's these aren't like there's always going to be flaws in democracy, but we have to acknowledge that the system of voting in Venezuela is far superior to the system of voting. Make it even less democratic here in America. And then let's not even we can't even start talking about how elections are also bought, uh, how corporations are free speech, and it's just ridiculous, right? That you can donate hundreds of thousands through a PAC to a candidate or to a party and say that that's free speech. It's nonsense. And that, I mean, that's how you buy a politician. So he's got to listen to this corporation instead of listen to his constituents, which are like thousands of people. Um, yeah. So what uh, what uh, what Venezuela is showing that America doesn't want the world to see is that true democracy is through socialism and through communism. Uh, and that is why there's such a high uh, uptick of propaganda these last couple of weeks to try to smear Venezuela as a dictatorship, and it's crazy. It's crazy how people buy it. Like the propagandization of people has been so good that these people the brain of these people that buy into it is mush. It's mush. They literally call Maduro a dictator. They literally say we need to deliver freedom. I'm just glad that the Venezuela people have chosen. They've chosen wisely, and they're going to keep moving forward. And I wish the people of Venezuela and Chavismo the best, and I hope they progress and they come out victorious to show the world that there's a better way, uh, as is doing places like Vietnam. Okay, all right, those are my thoughts. Check 1 2. Okay, I'm not gonna. I mean, we could read Kamala Harris, but we're not going to because this is an ongoing issue. I mean, there's no election till 2020, till the end of November, I believe, uh, and this is developing still. Uh, it's no surprise to us as leftists, as socialists, as communists, as Marxists, as proletariat that Kamala Harris his corporate bot paid for and just another sock puppet of the oligarchs and the kleptocracy. All right, so we'll start on her next time, maybe tomorrow, maybe not. I think I can get on here tomorrow. Same with the wildfires. So we'll read on to we'll start with this Kamala Harris article next time. All right, everybody enjoy